Your boss offers you $90,000 salary plus shares worth $30,000. Sounds like a $120,000 package, right? Well, but it's not. And if you don't understand the difference, you could end up owing lots of tax on money you haven't even actually touched to the ATO. Hey, welcome back. I'm Molly, founder of Above Advisory and a certified tax accountant with over 15 years helping small business owners and employees to legally reduce tax and actually build long-term wealth. If you work at a startup, have been offered employee shares or options as part of your salary package, or you're a business owner thinking about using equity to attract talent, this video is going to be specifically for you. At the end of this video, you know exactly how shares as salary package is structured, what vesting means and how vesting works, when the ATO comes for their tax cut, and most importantly, how to make sure you're not hit with a tax bill or money you haven't even been paid yet. 6 things to be aware of, clean and simple. Let's go. Let's start from the top, the structure. What you're actually getting. When a company offers you a package that includes equity, instead of a straight $120,000 salary package, it might look like $90,000 cash salary plus shares or option worth around $30,000. That gets you the same number on paper, but the way you receive that extra $30,000 is completely different from how your salary lands in your bank account every fortnight. Now, that equity part usually comes in one of 2 forms, and it's worth knowing the difference. The first is actual shares. When you receive the extra shares from a company, you become a part owner of a company from day one. If the company pays dividends, you get a cut as well. If the company grows in value, your shares are worth more. So it's real ownership and real upside. The second and far more common in startup is options. Options are not shares. They are the right to buy shares at a later stage at a fixed price, called the exercise price or strike price. So if the company is valued at $2 per share today and grows to $10 per share in 3 years' time, you can still buy at the original $2 price, pocketing the difference in the market value of the shares. But here's the catch. Options are only worth something if the company is going to actually grow. If it stays flat or fails, your option could expire worthless. So let me know in a comment below, have you ever been offered shares or options as part of your job? I want to know how common it is in our audience. Okay, so now you have accepted the job. You're getting shares or options, but here's the something most people gloss over in their offer letter. You don't get everything upfront. Almost every equity package has a vesting schedule. A vesting schedule is a timeline that determines when you actually earn your shares. And the most common structure in startups look like this: 4-year vesting period with 1-year cliff. Let me explain what that means in plain English with real numbers. Say you're offered $10,000 shares. If you leave the company within 11 months, you get 0 shares, nothing. That's the cliff. If you hit the 12 months mark, suddenly 25% of that equity unlocks. That's 2,500 shares in one go. After that, the remaining shares vest gradually, usually monthly or quarterly over the next 3 financial years. So by year 4, if you've stayed the whole time, you will own all $10,000 shares. The whole point of this structure is retention. The company is essentially saying, we want you here long term, so the longer you stay, the more you earn. And honestly, that's fair, but you need to go in with eyes open and understand how it works, because if you leave before that cliff, you walk away with nothing from the equity side of your package. All right, so if you have vested your shares, now how do you actually turn them into cash? There are 3 main ways this can happen. Number 1, you sell the shares on the market. If you work at a publicly listed company, this is pretty straightforward. Your shares vest, they're in your brokerage account, you can sell them whenever you want. Quite simple. But if you're at a private startup, which is the majority of companies offering equity, there's no public market to sell on. You can't just log onto your ComSec account and offload your shares on a Tuesday afternoon. In that case, you're usually waiting for what's called liquidity event, which brings us to option 2. Number 2, The company gets sold or lists on a stock exchange. This is the big exit event. If the company gets acquired or it gets IPO and suddenly your shares convert to actual cash or publicly tradable stock. This is why startup equity can be life-changing for some employees, but it's also why it can also count as a gamble. You might have to wait 5, 6, 7 years for that exit, and it might also never come. Number 3, dividends. This is the least common part in startups. Most early stage companies are reinvesting every dollar back into their growth. That means they're often not paying any dividends. But if you're in a more established private company that is profitable and distributing earnings, dividends are still possible. The owner's summary here is the most startup employees, you only make money when something big happens. Until then, your equity is just sitting there. It's quite valuable on paper, but it's untouchable in real life practice. And that gap between when the ATO says that you've been paid and when you can actually access the cash is exactly where things go wrong. So let's talk about how the tax sort of falls in all of this. This is the part I really need you to stay with me on, because this is where I see clients get blindsided every single financial year. In Australia, most shares and options offered through employment fall under what's called an employee share scheme, or ESS. And ATO has very specific rules about when and how you get taxed on that equity. There are 2 main tax timings, and which one applies to you depends entirely on how your scheme is set up. The first one is upon upfront taxation. This means you're taxed when the shares or options are granted to you based on their market value at that point. Now, this sounds pretty straightforward, but imagine you receive shares today worth $30,000 and owe tax on that $30,000 this financial year. But you can't sell them just yet. You've got a tax bill and no cash to pay for it. That's the real problem. And that's why upfront taxation is generally not ideal for most employees. The second and much more common in startup land is also called deferred taxation. Under deferral, you don't pay tax when you receive the shares, you pay at a later stage, specifically when the share vests or you sell them, or when you leave the company. Whichever comes first, that triggers that tax event. The reason most startups structure things for deferral is quite practical. They don't want employees getting a tax bill before they've even seen any cash or equity in their bank account. It makes the equity feel like a penalty rather than a reward. But here's what catches most people out as well. And this is the story from one of my own clients. He had shares vest in a year where the company had grown significantly. The shares were worth $75,000 at vesting, but he hadn't sold a single one. He couldn't because it was a private company. He had no idea those vested shares needed to be reported as income. He lodged his tax return without even declaring them, and ATO made an audit on him, and suddenly he's looking back at taxes, interest, and penalties, all on income he still hasn't actually been paid in cash. And the fix is knowing and understanding your taxing point. You should ask your employer for ESS statements. Companies are legally required to provide you one, and if you're unsure, get professional advice before the financial year ends and not after. Honestly, did you know vesting could trigger a tax event even without selling? Most people don't even know this. Let me know in the comment below if this is your first time hearing about this as well. Let's flip the table for a second and look at this from the employer side, because understanding their motivation helps you negotiate better with them. The main reason most companies offer equity instead of straight up cash is they're trying to conserve their cash runway. It aligns incentives. If you own a piece of the company, you're not just an employee, you're acting like an owner. You care whether the product ships, whether clients renew, whether the company hits its target. Because if the company wins, you win as well. For startups especially, this is how they compete against big corporates for talent. They can't always match a $150,000 salary package from a big 4 banks or a large consulting firm, but they can offer you the chance of the share in something that could worth significantly more one day. And look, that's a genuinely exciting proposition. I'm not here to talk to you out of equity compensation. What I'm here to do is to make sure you go in with your eyes open, because the alignment only works if the company succeeds, if the structure is fair, and if you actually understand what you signed up for. So before you countersign that offer letter, here are 4 things I wish every client had asked me about first. You won't find these in your employee welcome pack. Number 1 red flag would be paper wealth. Your shares might be valued at $30,000 on paper, but if the company is private, you can't sell them. That value is quite theoretical until there's a liquidity event. Don't factor it into your lifestyle budget. Red flag number 2, tax without cash, as we covered in the tax part. If your shares vest and have significant value, you might owe tax before you receive the single dollar from them. So you need to plan for this, set money aside from your salary, talk to an advisor before your share vests and not after. Red flag number 3, dilution. When a startup raises more funding, it issues new shares to the investors. That increases the total number of shares in the company, which can also shrink your percentage ownership. Your 1% stake can quietly now become 0.6% without anyone actually telling you. This isn't necessarily bad. A smaller size of a bigger pie can still be more valuable, but you need to understand that is happening and model out the different scenarios. Red flag number 4, vesting risk. If you leave the company before vesting, whether voluntarily or not, you lose your unvested shares. That might be fine if you're moving to something better, but if you are 3 years into 4-year vesting period, you get made redundant, that last year of shares just disappears. Always know exactly where you are on your vesting schedule. And when negotiating a new role, consider whether your new employer will offer anything to compensate for unvested equity you're leaving behind as well. That's called an equity buyout, and it's more negotiable than what people realize. So let's bring it all together. Shares as salary can be a genuinely powerful form of compensation, but only if you understand what you're working for and what you're working with. We've covered the structured shares versus options and what you actually own and how vesting works, the cliff, the timeline, and why it's designed to keep you there, how you can make money by selling exits and dividends, the tax treatment, upfront versus deferred, and the employee share scheme rules in Australia. We also discuss why companies do it, for the cash conservation and incentive alignment, what to watch out for, the 4 red flags that catch people off guard. So if this have helped you make sense of your own package, or if you got a situation you want me to break down, drop in a comment below. If you find this video helpful, like this video and make sure you're subscribing this channel for more tips and tricks for small business owners and tax saving tips. See you next time.